You're listening to the Savoir Faire Audio Experience.
Are you ready?
The Savoir Faire Experience is your guide to everything that has to do with lifestyle. From dating, rides, style, and entertainment. All brought to you by the editor of Savoir Faire magazine, Robert White. Anything goes on this audio experience. So, let's go.
It's still the best.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Savoir Faire Audio Experience. Thank you guys for sharing, caring, listening, following the love. We really appreciate it. Today is another really great interview for you. This time we're going into the music category yet again with an excellent musical artist, not only from someone that I admire, but someone you guys have probably heard of too, and I hope you've heard the music. Michael Peterson is here. How are you doing, Michael?
Hey, I'm good, Robert. How are you today?
Oh man, I'm excellent actually. I wanted to make sure we were kind of full blown mode here before I started bragging up the impact you've had on my music life, or in my life in general. So I wanted to kind of dive into a couple of things before we start learning about you, because I just want to get my thank yous out of the way in the very beginning. Man, I remember this really clear story that happened. I went to Nashville 96, 97. I think this is right when you got your record deal and Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie hit the radio. This is right around the same time. And I was at the Broken Spoke off of Dickerson Road.
Of course.
Yep. And I was sitting there with a handful of songwriters, and some guy was like, yo, you got to hear this new song. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so he played this song, Drink, Swear, Steal, and Lie, because we were all really focused on what was hitting and what was happening in music. And that's how we were learning. Like, it was kind of copycat kind of situation, like, oh, this guy hit a hit with this kind of idea, so we should listen to. And I heard this song by you, loved your voice, loved the song, and so I started listening to everything else that Michael Peterson put out, and I fell in love just like most people did with From Here to Eternity, and it became a huge piece of my world, that song did, because I used it at karaoke competitions and made a lot of money because you made Here from Eternity. So I wanted to say, like, that's really the impact. But obviously, you've been writing songs and doing music for a really long time, and I'm excited to chat with you and just kind of dive into the music industry. You've got a good long career, and there's just so many pieces of your career that I think people would respect and even understand. So I want to give you the floor, but my first question for you today really is just, I want to learn about who you were before music was a piece of your world. So talk to me a little bit about, like, younger Michael, teenage Michael, before you really kind of kicked off coming to Nashville quite a bit and this whole record deal and the awards and the music kicked in.
Well, you know, we all respond to the things we see. So when we see somebody on television, that's kind of what we get from them. And I guess if I'm wanting to make sure that I understand your question, you're saying who's the guy that's not the guy we see on TV?
Yeah, really. It's good to know where people come from. You know, I think about that for entrepreneurs, but for musical artists, for sure. I mean, I always feel like this kind of talent's not, I mean, it can be taught, but it's just got to be in people. And I like to analyze some of that stuff.
Well, you know, for me, and thank you for saying that, that clarifies for me. So I don't recall a time ever where I wasn't profoundly attracted to music. From the age of 4 or 5, hearing the Beatles, just always music was a thing. And when I was in, you know, grade school and junior high and heading into high school, I had some learning challenges. There's a whole, without getting too scientific, but there's a whole thing that happens with the development of the brain in young children. And one of those has to do with the brain deciding which part of the brain is going to be dominant for which tasks. So some people are left brain dominant, other people are right brain dominant. There's people like me who, for whatever reason, my brain dominance didn't mature as quickly. And so because of that, I had some real challenges with reading. I had some challenges with comprehension, because if you can't read very well and retain it, you know, and a lot of that, it affects your vision, the way that you look physically, the vision. So it made it hard for me to sort of catch a moving object or hit a moving object. So when you're a kid growing up and all your friends are into sports, you have a hard time catching a ball or hitting a ball. It changes your direction. Because you want to do something that you feel like you can be good at. And so very early in my life, I ended up really pouring myself into music. So, junior high especially, I wasn't doing very well in school. I was, borderline barely passing. But music seemed to come easy for me. So I really poured myself into music at a very young age. And I, to this day, have poems and lyrics, although I didn't know that they were lyrics, stuff that I wrote back from like 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. So there was something in me that was writing things down, wanting to express myself. And as I can look back on that now from my vantage point currently, I think there was just something in me that was drawing me in that direction. Some people call it fate, some people call it a calling, but this has always been a part of my life. It's something that I wanted to do. And when I, got into college and then got out of college and was looking for a job, we all have jobs that we take that are, we know, not going to be our destination, but they're just our bridge to the next place. I always knew it was going to be music. I would open up the newspaper and I would look at the want ads, and I knew there was nothing there for me. So, it took me years to sort of find my way there. But, grade school, junior high, high school, music. It was just about music. And of course, I played college football because I played high school football, and I did play basketball. So some of my brain dominance issues started to settle down in my mid to late teens. So I was able to express myself athletically well enough that I ended up with a scholarship to play college football. And then I also had a music scholarship. And ironically, I couldn't do both because they both happened in the afternoons, the choir practice and the football practice. So I made a decision to just pursue my sports because at that age, 17, 18, 19 years old, I thought I can do music later. Can't do college football later, right? So this is now. But ironically, that was the decision that led to me being in the music business, because our quarterback, after we got out of college, ended up meeting and marrying a pop star, Denise Williams, which became my first manager, my first publisher, and my first record deal. So it always makes me smile to say, you never know how it's going to turn, because a decision to not pursue music in college, but instead to play football, was actually the door that led to me being in the music business. So you can't plan that way. It just worked out that way. Music was always a thing for me. It was something that came natural to me. And now at my age, I'm 66. I get up every day and I work on music, not because I'm trying to build something new. It's because I'm passionate about it to this day. It has been a constant thread since the time I was a young boy, really, to write and express myself.
Yeah, that's cool. So the writing part is really what kind of came first for you. At what point did you start kind of playing guitar and kind of making that part, becoming your instrument of choice when you started writing?
Sure. So my freshman year in college, at the end of my senior year of high school, my adopted father committed suicide. And on the heels of that, I discovered an album by an artist named Dan Fogelberg, and the album was called Netherlands. And as I headed off to college with that Netherlands album under my arm, it became the soundtrack, really, of the next 10 years of my life. The songs on that album so deeply impacted me emotionally, specifically related to my father's murder when I was 15 and my my adopted dad's suicide when I was 17. And something about that record spoke to me so deeply that in the middle of my freshman year of college, a teammate of mine had a really nice Ovation guitar, and I heard he was selling it. So I bought it from him, and the campus had a coffee house that had an open mic night once a week. And I had friends who were going and sitting in this open mic. So I thought, maybe I should try to write some songs, maybe like these Dan Fogelberg songs that have impacted me so much. Maybe I could write some music that would help me feel better about what I'm going through. And maybe I could make music that could make other people feel the way that this record made me feel. So that's where it started. Just a simple intuition that I had and a hunch. I bought a guitar. There was an open mic. I thought, I want to get up there.
Yeah.
So really, you're just following my gut, really. That's where it started, and I had taken some guitar lessons, like, your basic, there's 15 people in the room. Everybody has a classical guitar. Here's a C chord, an E chord, a D chord, an A chord. Here's how you strum. So I kind of had some basics under my fingers already. But that's where I took off. And people said, well, did you take lessons after that? No, I took lessons, but nothing formal. I sat with a James Taylor record and the book that had the sheet music in it, and I listened to the record and I looked at the chords and I thought, how's he doing that? Mm-hmm. So I had 1,000 teachers, but none of them formal, other than just me listening and trying to figure out how to play.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love hearing you kind of talk about the way you learned guitar, because it's actually the same way that I learned how to play too. It was just buying the sheet music, hearing the note, understanding where the fingers went. I couldn't read music. I still can't read music, but it was those little square, icons that were on the sheet that showed you where your fingers went. And as long as you hit that, you could play the chord. And over time, it just gets stuck to memory. And when you start kind of playing stuff out and listening to stuff, you're like, oh, it is an E minor chord that goes really well in this spot. And you just kind of start developing those skills, which is super cool. I mean, at this point, do you feel like you're more advanced, obviously, than you were when you were younger? Like you could probably play most stuff on guitar. Or is there still limitation?
I decided years ago that I was going to be a rhythm guitar player, and I would hire lead guitar players. And then there's that next level of people who are virtuosic, if that's a word, on guitar, where they can sort of do everything. So a friend of mine years ago, I said to him, "Man, you're such a great guitar player," and he said, "No, I'm not." And I said, "No, really, you are." And he said, "No, I'm not." And I said, "What makes you say that?" And he said, "I just don't show you what I can't do."
Ah, that's so cool.
Right. So I just came to a place years ago where I thought, you know what? I do what I do. I do it with a real connection to the music. Like, I don't know. When I do demos and when I do work tapes, I try to play and sing at the same time, because there's this dance between what I'm playing and what I'm expressing with my voice. Mm-hmm. And there's real subtle nuances in that, how soft you play against a note while you're singing. That doesn't come as naturally if you do those things separately, right? Yeah. So I think, I've become more confident that not comparing myself to anybody else, but just comparing myself to, what it is I want to accomplish. It not comparing, but understanding that I have the ability to express myself, and that it's my way of expressing myself. I don't have to compare it to anybody else, and that it works for me. And I've had people say to me that they recognize there is this kind of, it's not the right word to use, but in songwriting, there's either prosody or prosody, however you say it. But there's this relationship between the melody and the words. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think if I can borrow that word, I think there's a natural kind of prosody between the playing of the guitar and the singing. Like, there's some kind of relationship there, and how that dances becomes a fingerprint that's unique to each person. And so I recognize the value of that, and I try to, that's what people hear when they hear you play live. They hear this live dance between the playing and the singing, and there's some kind of special relationship there. There's an empathy and an intimacy that unfolds. I've never talked about this before, but I recognize that that's a real thing. So I'm not a great player in let's say compared to other people, but what I do really well, and it works for me.
Yeah, I have a little taste of what you're talking about. I mean, I played writers' nights and stuff around Nashville, still play my guitar on a regular basis when I write. And I completely understand kind of that synergy that you're talking about. I think most people that play music and that perform probably could tap into that energy. And I'm not sure what we call that, but that kind of synergy between your brain clicking into remembering the lyrics and playing the note and trying to deliver something emotional, trying to have the feeling that you had when you wrote that music so that people will understand if this was a happy, sad, kind of perspective. I think those are really, really unique. I mean, your brain's going 100 miles an hour when you're playing a song at some point. I mean, I'm sure for some situations, you got, 30, 40 years here now of Drink, Swear, Steal, Lie, Here to Eternity, all these hits from the beginning part of your career that I'm sure you consistently play. But every time you play them, they're not just, possibly memorized, but at the same time, there's still a feeling and emotion, I'm sure, as the artist. That you tap into some of that stuff every time you play that song live.
Well, absolutely. There's this subtle, almost invisible phrasings that happen with your right hand, your left hand while you're playing, that happen with the vocal, that are affected by what's going on in the room. So like you're watching a room and something funny happens. You might pause for a second. You might lean into a moment a little bit longer, hold a note a little longer. But you never would think of doing that in the studio. But that's what makes a live performance such a special thing. It's like a juggler. Really, if you think about it, it's like a juggler. There's so many pieces that are happening at the same time. You're looking at the room. You're trying to deal with your own inner voice. You're trying to sing. You're trying to remember. You're playing the song. All of that has to look like Fred Astaire great. Like you don't want to let them see you sweat. And doing all of that in a way that is also keeping in mind to where are you going next? What's going to be the next song? What are you going to say? Like, all of that stuff is happening in that moment. It's intense. There's a lot going on. And to do that in a way that becomes transparent so that the audience doesn't see any of it, but they just feel a connection. I think there's an art to that can only be found by experience. And so people say, well, how do you get to where you can do that? And I said, you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you get in the pool, and you start to drown, and you get out, and you jump back in, and you start to drown, and you get out, and you jump back in. You do what my grandma said. You play if they like you. You play if they don't. You play if they pay you. You play if they don't. You just go and play.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. I mean, I really appreciate kind of diving into some of that stuff because it's motivational, but it's also really kind of unique to hear that perspective because most of us show up at a concert, we're there for the emotion and the feeling, whatever. And it's cool to know that the artist is kind of on stage, looking out, seeing the crowd, understanding things that are happening in the crowd. And it's not just like a robotic situation, at least with you, it's not. And I kind of love that idea that there's an idea that like when you see something happening, you pause or extend a note because people are going to sing with you, or when you stop singing and let the crowd take over. There's all that kind of unique stuff that I'm sure is kind of unique. I definitely want to talk about.
It is.
Go ahead.
It's something that I have come to call planned spontaneity.
Okay.
Because you have a plan, you have a set list. You have your idea of what the performance might be because you've done them before. Mm-hmm. So you have a framework. But within that framework, it's not check the box, check the box, check the box. There's something about having a loose attachment to that and being willing to be with the room that makes it come alive. That isn't if you just get up and play a set list. The audience I don't think the audience comes to a show to hear about you. They come to a show to hear music about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. They come because they want an experience, not because they want to hear you tell your stories. If your stories don't give them an experience, they don't care. There's probably some semantics around all of that, but I'm just saying, I think people go to shows because they want something from it. Mm-hmm. It's really, and so bearing that in mind as a performer is like, what does my audience want? Well, they want to see themselves, hear themselves. They want to laugh, and they want to look at the person they're with and go, oh, that's so us. Bearing all of that in mind, while at the same time, you're an artist who's trying to say, this is me. So it takes a lot of time and years of experience to get really, really good at that and know who you are and just be with it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of unique. And I want to talk about writing with you, but I'm going to just kind of add to the topic and the conversation we're having right now. I want to kind of assume that musical artists in general attach to people in very specific ways. Maybe you're out on the boat on the lake and the song comes on and just happens to be this perfect little moment that you kind of attach yourself to that music. And then eventually you hear that song again, you figure out who that artist is. And now they're on, they're a part of your world. They're a great memory. There's the songs that you listen to when you're breaking up with somebody, when you get married, when you have your first child. There's all these songs that kind of just adapt to people and become like a playlist for each individual person. And I think that's where things connect. And obviously, you've had some amazing songs in your career so far that have really hit people in that way, been used multiple times in TV, on radio. People hear them all the time. Like I was mentioning earlier about Here to Eternity was a huge thing for me. When I think about that song, even though it was a ballad, a wedding song, I literally go back to memories of me singing that in karaoke clubs and bars and things like that. It just happens to be like that attachment. So I think when people come to a live concert and the artist understands that there's that psychology piece of this music that's really affected people's lives, and you can enhance that by putting on a good show or sharing a moment with somebody, like the pause, or letting them sing out loud or whatever. Those things just kind of build an adaptation to that music. And I think that's a super unique quality that music has for people. I think for me, it's definitely that level. It's so many stories. I can listen to all kinds of songs, from rock music, from country music to everything. And somewhere in my brain, I can click it or attach it to a memory. And that's why this song is on my playlist. That's why I listen to it. And it's been with me for 30 or 40 years, because it just kind of attached to a moment, and it reminds me of the moment. It allows me to relive it. And I think that's super unique and cool that music does that.
I do too. It's that sort of harkening back to our previous topic we were talking about. When you've had an experience with a song like From Here to Eternity, and then maybe you and I are in the same room and I play it, you're not just experiencing me singing it, you're experiencing what it means to you again.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think I meant when I said people come to the show to hear what the songs mean to them. When I go to see James Taylor and he plays Fire and Rain, all my little synapses are firing related to where I was, what that song meant to me.
Yep.
And so it's almost like the artist has the performer has the privilege, really, of just setting the table so that people can come and relive their memories.
Yep.
And when you were telling the story about karaoke and From Here to Eternity, I have to tell you the funniest story. From Here to Eternity was #1 in the country. And I was on the road, and I had just gotten off the road. It was in December. And I just gotten off the road, and we were taking a break for the holidays. And here I have the #1 song in the country. So some friends of mine call me and they say, "Hey, come on out. We're going to go do karaoke night." And I said, "Yeah, sure. I've been on the road. I want to see my friends." And my friends that I hung out with were songwriters mostly.
Mm.
And we're out on an adult beverage night, if you get my drift.
Yep.
And so I show up at this place, and this guy keeps bugging me about like getting up to sing From Here to Eternity. And I'm thinking to myself, if my manager is here, he'd tell me, "No, man, you have the #1 song in the country. You're not going to sing it at a karaoke night." Like that, I would think that he would have looked down his nose at that. But I had a few adult beverages, and I changed my mind. So I got up and I sang From Here to Eternity. And of course, people you can imagine the reaction people had that were there. Were like, "What?" But at the end of it, the same guy that was bugging me to sing it, he was really drunk by now. And he came up to me and he said, "You're really good," with slurred speech. He said, "You're really good, but you're no Michael Peterson."
I love that story.
Oh, true story.
I love that. That's so unique and cool. Yeah, I could imagine being one of those people in that bar and hearing that song and be like, "Oh, I love this song. This is so great," and have no idea at that perspective that was you. Like, how cool is that?
Funny?
Yeah, I love that.
God. You're great. You're good, but you know Michael Peterson.
Like, you should have showed him your ID, Michael. You definitely should have
It's
just been
funny,
like,
man.
actually, I am. I think that would have been a cool thing. Well, let's talk about
Very funny.
songwriting, because I talked to you a little bit about your history and stuff, about writing and stuff. It just happens to be, maybe you're just a word guy. I know that a lot of different songwriters that I've interviewed for my podcast show have talked to me about, just starts with strumming a guitar, it starts with putting words to paper. Which direction do you go with those? And then let's dive into some of these stories, because I heard another interview that you did about Drink, Swear, Steal, Lie. I know that was a big hit for you, one of the first ones that knocked it out of the park for you and your name. I'm really curious about hearing that story, about how that song came to be.
Well, okay. So thank you for asking. For me, for whatever reason, okay, I'll tell you a story. In my early 20s, I was just, quote unquote, eaten up with songwriting. Like, I wasn't getting paid. The only people who liked my songs were my friends, and they had to, or the beer stayed in the refrigerator, But I set a goal for myself. I don't know why. I'm a good goal-oriented guy, but I set a goal for myself. I was probably 23, 24. I set a goal for myself that I wanted to write 20 songs a year.
Mm.
And so that was, it was a goal, and I took it very seriously. And I also signed up for every publication that I could get my hands on, whether it was the National Songwriters Association magazine or the LA Songwriters Showcase or whatever, all of these publications. So I get them monthly, and I just read them ravenously. And there was an interview with Kenny Loggins. And Kenny Loggins in this interview was talking about melodies and how a songwriter could develop their ear for a melody. And he said, if you want to really develop your ear for melodies, then quit listening to music that has words. And I thought, that's interesting. So I dove into it a little more, and he basically said, here's a challenge. Quit listening to pop radio, to rock radio, to country radio, to top 40 radio, and start listening to the easy listening instrumental stations and to classical music. And do that for a year or two, exclusive of anything else. Don't only listen to instrumental music. And what will happen is you'll sort of by osmosis, you will start to absorb an intuitive understanding about the math around melody. And for whatever reason, that really struck me. And so I'm going to guess from 23 to about 26, I did everything I could to avoid listening to music with words, and I just focused in on melodies. And so as I got, to a place where I started to, I said, okay, I think I got it. Okay, so fast forward, I'm now 36 or 37. I'm living in Nashville. My career is, doing well. And I'm in a writing appointment with one of my songwriting heroes, a guy named John Bettis. John wrote, among others, he wrote Crazy for You for Madonna. He wrote Human Nature for Michael Jackson. He wrote One Moment in Time for Whitney Houston. He wrote 27, I think, Carpenter's cuts, including On Top of the World and Yesterday Once More. I mean, he's a phenomenal lyricist. And we wrote a lot together. And one day he said to me, Michael, you really have a gift for melody. And I said, really? Well, what made you say that? And he said, well, melody is like sculpture. And I said, well, what do you mean it's like sculpture? He said, it's all about shape. And I thought back to this 2 or 3 year focus that I did at Kenny Loggins' invitation to just plug into listening to instrumental music, and the possibility that during that time I would come to have an inherent understanding more than I had prior to that, intuitively, about the shape of a melody. And when he said that to me, it was like, I don't know, I mean, I was in my mid-30s and he was a hero of mine, but I might as well have been a 10-year-old kid who had Babe Ruth walk up to him and put his hand on his shoulder and say, "Kid, someday you're going to be a great slugger."
Yeah.
You know, John Bettis told me that I had a gift for melody. And it was something about him saying it to me and who he was in my life that made me then focus on it even more. And you know, reflecting back to your question, you know, what's my process? Well, for whatever reason, whenever I hear words or start to shape words, I have an awareness about not just the rhythm of the words, which the rhythm of the words determines the length of the notes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But there's also an inherent melody in the words. So if you analyze anyone's conversation, like what I just said, anyone's, there's a movement in that.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of suggests a melody. So to me, great lyrics, like we talked about prosody earlier, there's something about a great lyric and then the music that just sounds like it was custom fit for it. And I think there's a relationship between the natural movement of the way a person says a sentence and what that suggests melodically. And when those things are lined up in a way that works, then it seems like it's sort of hand in glove. And I think for years I didn't have a way to tell you what was happening with that dynamic. Now I think I do. But for years I intuitively was looking for it to feel right. And so when I wrote words, I don't know, it's probably starting in college, I wrote, as I wrote the words, I kind of had a sense of what the melody might be. And then I did this Kenny Loggins exercise for a couple of years, and I started having more confidence that my melodies just worked. Like, oh, I need to go up here and down here. And the more guitar chords that I learned so that I could express myself with more nuance tonally, you know, like let's play a major seventh there instead of just a full major chord. Why? I don't know. There's a certain kind of emotion in a major seventh chord or a diminished chord or whatever, you know. And there's this dance around all of that. And the longer you do it and the more you do it, the more you move from being an apprentice to a journeyman. And I'd say at this point in my life, I'm a journeyman songwriter. Like I you know, have a lot of tools in my toolkit. I don't think about them much anymore in the way that you do when you're learning to drive a car, right foot gas, left foot brake. They're just there and they operate, you know, but I know they're there and they're my lens. I look at all of these moments through.
That's so cool. I want to know about this hook because I really like. So, "Drink, Swear, Steal, Lie" is a huge track for you. #1 hit. A bunch of stuff happened with this song. Just talk to me about the hook. Like when you're sitting and thinking about this, where did the hook come from?
You know, I think it was born from the idea that a pastor said to me. He said to me one day, he said, great communicators usually do one of two things. He said they'll either take what people already know and show them something they didn't know about it, or they'll take something people don't know and show them something they did know about it. So when you're trying to introduce a new concept to people, it helps if you can give them an anchor. So if I'm talking about, I don't know, let me think of something. I'm trying to tell you that an ex of mine had a cold heart. But you know, I want to say, you know, it was like dry ice, right? So if you've ever held a piece of dry ice in your hand and I want to take you to that place, I might say, have you ever held a piece of dry ice? Well, not for long because it's super cold, right?
Right,
okay.
right.
And I'm affirming that you know that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I pivot from that and I say, well, that was my former girlfriend.
Okay.
Right. You pivoted right to, when you say she's cold, wow. right? So he took a concept you already knew, and I want to tell you about something you didn't know, and that's my ex-girlfriend. Right?
Okay.
So,
Yep.
so there's a principle at work there. So it always kept occurring to me after he taught me that if I could take some words that people know in one context and show them or introduce them to a different way of looking at those words, they could have an aha moment. And it's like a joke. Like when you tell a joke or a riddle, there's the setup and then there's the punchline, right?
Yep.
So songs work the same way. People want to have a visceral reaction to whatever they're listening to, whether it's a joke or a short story or whatever. There's something they're watching and they want to have some emotional, like, oh, I get it, right? I remember when Drinks for a Still and Lie had been recorded but hadn't been released yet, I was talking to my producers and I said, hey, I think we need to start the recording with the hook. Darling, you're the reason why I drink, swear, steal, and lie. Well, I kept kind of hammering them about that. One day I got a phone call from Eddie Reeves, and Eddie was the vice president of Warner Brothers Records at the time, and he said, hey, come see me. So I went to his office, and he said, I hear you want to start the song out with the title. And I said, yeah, and I explained to him why. And he said, let me tell you a story. He said, my teenage daughter, I occasionally will play her, songs that are from our new artists here, because I'm trying to get a read on whether she likes them or not. And he said, so I gave her Drinks for a Still and Lie, a copy of it without the title on the front, just the original recording.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, she came back into my office and told me how much she loved it, and she really, really loved it a lot. So he said, I just said to her, thanks. I appreciate your feedback. And he said about a week later, she came back in my office super excited. And she said, Dad, did you know, did you get that? Like, there's a play on words here. Did you get that? Like, he's playing on the words, like drink from your loving cup, swear I'll never give you up. Like, you drink, swear. And the thing is, he was saying, my daughter loved the song at first. She really liked it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But once she had this breakthrough aha moment where she saw it for herself because you didn't spell it out, she felt like she'd made a personal discovery. And then she loved it for life.
That's so cool.
And he said, there's this principle that happens where people, so he said, so please don't put the title at the beginning. Give people the opportunity to discover it for themselves. And so when I wrote the song, I was hoping that people would have this moment where they have 4 words that they know in just context of country music. Drink, swear, steal, and lie. Oh, that sounds like a country song. Ha, ha, ha. In fact, the power of those words is so great that many people said they wouldn't listen to the song because of their faith, because it sounded like it was going to be about things that were immoral.
Mm-hmm.
When it had nothing to do with that at all. Right? So that's the power of those words. So when you can take iconic subjects and show people something about them that they didn't previously know, they have a discovery moment. And there's something about that that delights people. It's like when you get the punchline of a joke, you go, oh, I love that. That's funny. Let me tell 5 of my friends. So that there was a principle at work there. And that was what I was shooting for, was to try to create an aha moment in a song.
Yeah, it's super cool that that happened for the producer, like, and his daughter too, because that's the same reaction that I got when I heard it in that songwriters night, that tuning room. I heard Drink, Swear, Steal, Lie, and the hook, the transition was exactly the same feeling. Like, it got me excited when I'm still younger at that point. I'm still trying to educate myself on wordplay and building these hooks and having people kind of sucked into something and taking them a different direction. And that's exactly what this song did. So there's like so much education for writers in this song, on top of it being a hit. I mean, at this point, that song alone has 18 million listeners on Spotify so far. And Spotify wasn't even around in the 90s. So it's millions more than that.
Yeah.
Which is just incredible to know that so many people caught on to that concept that you wrote into this song, and kind of, I think they all had their aha moment. I mean, I definitely did. That song led me to Here to Eternity. So I'm just going to ask you brief questions because a lot of people know about that song as well. Who was the song about?
It wasn't about anyone in
Okay.
specific. It wasn't about any specific person. It was born from me having a conversation with my co-writer, Robert Ellis Orrell. And we said, a lot of people write wedding songs.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the poor guy who's sitting with the girl, wherever they're sitting, and he wants to propose to her, but he's nervous as all get out, and he's got the ring in his hand, and he's just having a hard time spitting it out. He doesn't want to blow it. I said, what if we wrote a song that asked the question for him? And he could just say to her as he's sitting in his truck with her looking out over the city down below, and they're sitting there quietly together, and he says, hey, can I play you a song? And so we imagined that he pushes in the CD or the cassette, and she listens to the song, and at the very end, he opens up his hand and holds it out and says, will you marry me? We just were trying to help that dude out. Like, let's
Good for you, Mike. I think a lot of people were able to pull off their proposals because of your song, honestly.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the whole intent, was like, okay, hey, maybe we can do a favor, right? Like, make it easier for him. And so that was our total intent, was let's write a song that will help that person to pop the question. And there are a lot of wedding songs, but there weren't any songs that I knew of that were pop the question songs. And so that was really our intention.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I love that song. I play it, sing it to today. It's part of my playlist, always will be. It's a great, great memory. It's a huge song for my world and my life. But I mean, the idea behind it, I was always curious, like, okay, he wrote it about somebody, but now that you're talking to me about this, just sitting in that songwriter session and kind of creating something that was, I mean, it became the tool for so many men to propose, but it's a huge wedding song still to this day. I mean, anyone listens to country music, this song's going to get played by a DJ at your wedding. It's just, it's inevitable. It's going to show up. So,
what it does for me is it highlights a principle that did you know who Dwayne Blackwell was?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know who that is.
Okay. Yeah. So Dwayne co-wrote, among other things, Friends in Low Places.
Yep.
So one day Dwayne said to me, if you want to be a superstar as an artist or as a songwriter, then write or sing songs that make you a spokesperson instantly for millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I just never forgot that. And another way of saying that is to ask yourself the question when you start to write a song, is the title T-shirt worthy?
Oh, that's a good point. I like that.
Right? Or bumper sticker worthy. Like, are millions of people likely going to wear that on a shirt or on a bumper sticker?
Mm-hmm.
So From Here to Eternity is a song that has universal appeal because every year, every month, every day, people are getting married, and they're navigating one of the most important moments of their lives. And so, I wasn't thinking about it that way when I wrote it, but I was trying to keep an eye on the ball about what kind of songs to write that might have an appeal to a broader audience.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. So I want to ask you about this, Michael, too. You've traveled the world. You've had a ton of success in music, huge hits that have definitely lasted the test of time. All kinds of really, really great things have happened in your world. But I'm really curious from your perspective, what are the highlights? Tell me about something that happened in your career that is just something you'll always, always remember about some of this stuff. Maybe it was a person you met, a road story, a place you played. What's one thing that really hit you the most and still is kind of a big highlight for you?
Okay, so I'm just going to say the first thing that came to mind.
Sure.
If I sat and thought about it, I'd probably overthink it. One day I got an envelope from a fan in my manager's office. I was looking through fan mail, and I opened an envelope, and it had something in it. I could tell it was kind of heavy. And I opened it up, and out fell onto the desk a car key, like a truck key, like with a plastic end on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it was one of those keys that had like a plastic end on it, but the key had been cut in half, and it had a chain, a necklace attached to it. So I thought, well, this is interesting. What is this? So I opened up and read the letter, And the letter was from a woman who said that, told me the story that her husband had been a terrible alcoholic. And that one day, driving his truck, he totaled the truck and almost killed himself. And so after that, she used to steal his car keys. And she took his old car key from that truck and she put it on a chain and she wore it around her neck, cut in half so he could never use it again, to remind herself that she should never trust him to drive.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm reading, and she says, and I no longer need this because of your song. You know you're in trouble when the bartender cries.
Mm-hmm.
My husband heard that song and decided that he needed to get into rehab. So he's been in rehab. He's now going to AA regularly. He's been sober now for almost 2 years. And I no longer feel like I need to wear this necklace around my neck to remind myself that I can never be totally at ease about my husband.
Wow. Yeah, that's the stuff that's so cool about music, man. I love the power of it. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I love that kind of stuff, to know that someone heard that song and it completely changed their lives. Like, music and the artists that create it become our literally life counselors, not in the idea that they kind of get to go into your mental state and unpack things and do those kind of things, but like exactly what you're talking about, being able to have this song and have that moment, but to have that person kind of give you a piece of that and thank you for that experience. That's really kind of cool. That's a really cool story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, fun. Yeah. So another story that comes to mind.
Yeah, go for it.
There was a woman who lived in Florida. Her name was Dorothy Parker.
Oh, we know the name. Cool.
Well, she's deceased now. But at the time Dorothy Parker and I met, she was 86 years old. And she was a fan. And I think I met her at Fanfare. And for whatever reason, I was just drawn to her. And I hugged her neck and found her a place to sit down. And we just connected. So that was probably the only time I met her. Or maybe I met her at a fan club party. I don't remember exactly. It's been a while. But she began to write to me on a regular basis. And she would send me photographs. And the photographs would be pictures of me that she took off of watching CMT. So there'd be me on CMT and she'd take a picture of it, just send it to me. and it was just so endearing because she was such a fan and she wanted me to know that she was following me. So she'd take pictures of me on TV and she'd send me these things. Well, one day, 2 boxes show up at my house, and they're good sized boxes. They're about 6 inches thick. They're about 3 feet wide and about 4 feet long. And they arrive special delivery, and they're very heavy. And I open up the boxes and I pull out 2 of the most beautiful, well done cabinets. And each of these cabinets is like a cabinet that like a keepsake cabinet. You know, like you put keepsakes in.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And inside of each cabinet, inside the first one, there's on parchment that's now done in calligraphy, the first half of the lyric to That's What They Said About the Buffalo, which was off my first record. And right above it is a bronze a piece of bronze artwork that is of a buffalo. And it's right above the lyric. And below the first half of the lyric is this parchment that's yellowed, that's done in calligraphy. And then in the second cabinet is another piece of, in the second cabinet is the same as a bronze of an eagle and of Timberwolf. So there's 2 of them.
Wow.
They're about, I don't know, 24 inches wide and about 18 inches tall. So these are substantial pieces of artwork that she's had created and framed in these memory boxes, along with this lyric that meant so much to her. And she just did it because she was a fan and she wanted to do something nice for me. I have a portrait that hangs in our house of my dog Bubba that a fan created of Bubba. Bubba was he was my dog for 18 years. He was just like a soul brother to me. That hangs in the house. One day I'm standing in an alleyway talking to some songwriter friends off of Music Row. And the building that we're at is right behind Reba McEntire's Starstruck Studios.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm having some hit records. I'm having some success. I think From Here to Eternity's been out. And I'm just standing in the parking lot talking. And all of a sudden I hear a honk, honk. And I look out into where they hear the noise coming from. And there's a SUV parked there. And the windows rolled down. And there's a redhead sitting in the seat. And she's waving me over. So I walk over and I'm like, oh, yeah, are you kidding me? It's Reba McEntire. And
Oh,
she
wow.
stopped in the alleyway to roll down the window to tell me how much she likes my music and to encourage me. But she didn't have to do that.
Right.
It's a memory. So I'm at the Academy of Country Music Awards in California. It's my first time to be there. I'm nominated for Best New Artist. And I'm waiting out front of the hotel on my way to a rehearsal or something. And a limousine pulls up. Of course, when a limousine pulls up, everybody wants to know who's inside of it. And the window rolls down. And lo and behold, the window in the back seat of the limousine, the window rolls down and it's Buck Owens.
Oh.
And he looks at me and he says, come here. So I walk over. He asked me if I'm Michael Peterson. I said, yeah. He said, man, I like what you're doing. He said, would you ride with me over to the show tonight? And I'm like, what? So when it's time to go to the venue, Buck Owens picks me up in his limo and takes me to the venue. And thus begins my relationship with Buck Owens, which led to many times playing at the Crystal Palace in Bakersfield and us becoming friends. So those are some stories that come to mind just along the way, that what the kindnesses of people that were established superstars,
Mm-hmm.
being kind and going out of their way to make me feel like I mattered and that they appreciated what I was doing. Those are some stories about some things that happened with fans. I don't know. I could probably think of more, but those are the ones that
I'm
came to
sure.
mind.
There's just so many because you've had such a great career. I love that stuff about Buck Owens too, which is super cool. I met Bill Anderson, Ricky Skaggs, and a handful of other really legendary people at the Grand Ole Opry. I don't know how I pulled it off. I was just a really good salesperson when I was younger. Maybe I still am, but I was able to get backstage somehow. And it was a night when all those guys were performing, and it was so unique because the Whites and Ricky Skaggs were there. Ricky was the first person I met when I got up on the stage. A security guard introduced me to him. Oh, hey kid, how's it going? You dressed well. There was some kind of shirt I was wearing, trying to fit into the country scene a little bit. And he's like,
Sure.
Let me introduce you to my wife. And we came over and the Whites were there and we were kind of all talking a little bit. And she's like, your last name is White? She's like, we might be related. I remember that clear as day. And I'm like, I hope we are. So
Wow.
that was kind of a unique thing that I had in music. I met a lot of great people when I lived in Nashville in that stint too. But I want to talk a little bit about now, Michael, because I'm so excited to hear that you have connected with Pat Melfi and Steve Cox, and you are starting to kind of start writing and producing some stuff. What's going to happen with these guys? How did this story, talk to me about how this reconnection happened and what's on the horizon now?
Well, thank you for asking. Years ago, I connected with a gentleman named Stan Moress. And Stan was an artist manager, among other things, of great renown. He managed Eddie Rabbitt, Crystal Gale. He discovered Gloria Estefan, the Miami Sound Machine. Just a really legendary guy. And Stan and I became really good friends. And when Stan passed away, we were very connected through his Facebook. And when Stan passed, after Stan passed, one day I just was, connecting, looking back at Stan's page, and I saw Pat Melfi's name. And, kind of one thing led to another. I reached out to him, and became friends on Facebook, and we just started exchanging, short little snippets back and forth. So over the course of about, 2 years or so, kind of got familiar with each other through that. And one day, we decided we'd share a phone call and found out we had a lot in common. And kind of one thing led to another. And one day, we both said to each other, hey, I think we're supposed to work together. So I wasn't looking for a manager at this point in my life, and he wasn't looking for a new artist at this point in his life. But it just became clear to us that we were both feeling like a calling to work together. So at this point, we're doing, well, first of all, I'm writing a lot and creating a lot of new music. And, our plan at this point is to record a new album this coming spring of 2026.
Awesome.
So that's the plan at this point. And, new music with new things to share. And I love the story about Charles Lindbergh, who on his first transatlantic flight was just coming into the lights of Paris. I mean, imagine this. He's been the first person in history to fly across the Atlantic Ocean by himself in an airplane. I mean, how scary and exhilarating that must have been. And he's now across the ocean, and he's going to land in Paris, and he knows when he lands, he's going to be the Neil Armstrong of his generation, right? I mean, back then, for somebody to do what he did, they might as well have gone to the moon. And he writes in his journal, just as he breaks through the clouds and sees the lights of Paris down below, knowing that when he lands, the whole life is going to change. He writes in his journal, "It's a shame that I have to land with the night so clear and so much fuel left in my tank." And when I think about, where I am at this stage in my life, that I feel like the night is clear and I still have a lot of fuel left in my tank. And I said that to Pat one day, and I said, he said, why do you want to, sort of work together and try to create something together? And I said, it's because I just feel like I have more to share. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like I'm trying to make a name for myself or, make a bunch of money, or I just feel like I still have things I want to share with people. And I want to have those moments where I'm with an audience and we all laugh about something that happened in the room, or I just want more of those moments in my life. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. Here's a really random thing here, Michael, and then we'll close this out because I really appreciate you finding some time for me. This morning, before you and I connected, I took my grandfather to an eye doctor's appointment. He had surgery yesterday to have a cataracts removed. He's 83 years old. We were in the car. We had about a 20-minute ride, and I love picking his brain about stuff. He's just seen so much life. There's just so many things. And we were talking about some stuff, and he's like, hey, do you remember when you were at my house the other day? And I said, yeah. He said, I showed you a postcard. There was a really cool postcard that he showed me. It said it was from 1930s, potentially. It had a marking on it that was kind of cool. It said 1 cent if you ship this domestically, and then 2 cents if it's internationally. And I thought that was kind of cool. He brought this up. He always brings up random little things. But he said, oh, the other thing that I just found in my basement I really want to give to you. And I said, yeah, what's that? He's like, you know that aviator guy from the early 1900s? And I was like, Charles Lindbergh? And he was like, yeah, that guy. He's like, I have photos of him. I said, you have photos of him? How do you have photos of him? He said, my grandfather was friends with him, and they have photos. I have a box of photos of him I found. How cool is that, dude? And you just mentioned that story, and I was like, it just clicked immediately. And I was like, yes, I'll take those photos. I'll figure out what we need to do with them. How cool is that? So I'm excited
cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to go see these photos. I dropped him off at home this morning, obviously, but wow. I'm really kind of curious to see now how this kind of plays out, because I do believe in, obviously, a stronger energy, universal energy, and you hitting that story just now, and I heard that word this morning, literally talk about the same guy. I definitely want to end this podcast with that, because I think that's an incredible story that you shared. great motivational stuff. I cannot wait, man, to see what you bring back to the world next year, because I love your writing. I love your style. I love everything about what you've done, what you provided. I have huge memories with your music. And so for me, that's incredible to know that you're kind of going to do this second wind comeback thing and really just kind of hit it. I'm excited to see some of the stuff you do. So if you make it to the East Coast, but even if you don't, I'm going to chase down your first concert for 2026 with this new music, and I promise you I'll be in the front row.
Oh, that is so sweet of you. And if you make it out to Las Vegas, please come. Let me know you're coming. We'll go have dinner.
Yeah, I would love that. That would be excellent. So thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it, Michael.
Thank you. And let me know when this podcast is going to happen so that I can tell everybody I know about it. We can help build your following.
I love that. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the show. Please take a minute to head over to www.savfair.com and subscribe to our publication.